Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. This is our Saturday edition where me and Jack Hirsch, we debate all sports topics. We're on every Wednesday through Sunday, 8 to 10 mornings. We are covering all your local Northeastern sports, New York, Boston, and Philly. You can follow us live on Mac's Sports Facebook page. Just go to @MacMan62 Facebook search, and it'll bring you right to us. You can Google Mac and Jack Sports, find us live on YouTube and Twitch, and also see our past shows. Follow us now on Instagram, where we have an account at Mac and Jack Sports to see all the local Northeast professional teams. Like, follow, share, and subscribe where you can to help us keep growing. I'm Mac with my co-host, the legendary boxing sports writer and former president of the Boxing Writers Association of America, Jack Hirsch, our sports historian and gatekeeper. And today on the show, we are joined by the award-winning sports author, Dr. Paul Semendinger. He also writes, or is founder, I should say, and probably does write too, for the popular Start Spreading the News blog, which covers all the Yankees updates, their history. It's a very good blog if you love the Yankees and if you like following what the Yankees do. I encourage you all to check out that blog because it's very informative. So, guys, happy Halloween!
Happy Halloween!
Yeah, I mean,
is it Halloween today?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Growing up as a kid, of course, you love going out trick or treating and getting the candy and getting in a costume. As I got older, it kind of it faded on me. But a lot of people still celebrate it a lot. Do you, Doc? Do you celebrate Halloween at all?
My kids are all big now, so we answer the door and we give away treats. But the best was being a kid, obviously, and getting candy. And then the second best was being a dad and bringing your kids around. That was awesome. I miss those days.
Jack, did you take candy from your daughter when she came home? Did you take a third of it and eat your favorite?
You better believe it. I have to check certain candy that wouldn't be good, so on. I get my, it's a percentage. Like you're a manager, you get your cut.
Right.
That's how it is. Yeah, sure.
Exactly.
I'll tell you, with the situation we have today, there's no opening the door to give kids candy, unfortunately. And parties are great, but there was nothing like growing up and going out and, going to the doors and holding your bag open and someone drops candy in your bag. And then you get home, you dump it all on your bed and you're looking at your whole pile of candy and all excited. I mean, wow.
Yeah,
that's a great thing,
Yeah. I guess as a kid you could put that right up there with Christmas. Easter growing up was a little different. I mean, it was more a religious holiday than it was, the Easter bunny for my family anyway. Growing up Catholic and back in the days where you actually dressed up and went to church, in your new suit, the girls wore their dresses and stuff like that. So that's changed a little bit. I'm sorry to say it's not celebrated that way as much as it used to anyway. But anyway, we're here to talk about sports. We got the great Dr. Semendinger on with us, and there's a few headlines I'd like to get through before we hit on the Yankees. The Detroit Tigers hire, I think it's A.J. Hinch as manager after being banned by the Astros for the cheating scandal. And of course, he apologized, and he's happy to be with Detroit. He says that Detroit has always been, a good baseball team in the past, and he wants to bring that back. What do you think about this hire? I guess you could say he's a good manager. He comes with some baggage now. What do you think about that, guys? Starting with you, Doc. What do you think?
Oh, I'm disappointed about the whole thing. That cheating scandal. It just didn't seem like Major League Baseball punished the actual perpetrators, which were the players, and the 1-year suspension for the managers. I think Alex Cora also got a year, and I understand he's a finalist for a number of jobs now. It just sends the wrong message. The Astros, if true, cheated so many different cities. I'm not even talking about the players, but New York could have had a World Series, and the economies and all of those various things that actually grow out of a baseball team and out of championships. And I don't know. It just seemed like a slap on the wrist that they only got a year. It was a truncated year at that because of the coronavirus, and now he's back in baseball, and now he's got a chance to be a manager again. It just seems I don't know. It just doesn't feel right in my gut and in my heart that all of a sudden he's managing again. Didn't seem like much of a punishment, did it?
Yeah. No. How about you, Jack?
Well, he did serve a year. Keep in mind, Alex Cora lost his job as manager of the Red Sox, and he doesn't have a job right now. Carlos Beltran lost his job as manager of the Mets. He doesn't have a job right now. My feeling is sign stealing's going on all the time. I mean, whenever the managers visit the pitching mound, notice the pitcher's holding the glove over his mouth so no one notices what he's seeing. The Astros crossed the line. That's what the problem was. Not what they did. They went a little too far, using certain technology and so on. And I think that's what ticks people off the most. But no, their attitude. That was the thing about it. The lack of remorse afterwards. And like I've said on the past show, every time Carlos Correa opens his mouth, he just makes things worse.
Yeah.
So,
I
yeah.
agree with that, definitely. We just had the World Series came to an end, Doc, and of course the Dodgers were favored preseason to go all the way and win it all. They're going up against the Tampa Bay Rays. It's Game 6. Your ace is on the mound. It's the 5th or 6th inning. He's cruising along. I mean, he's dominating the Dodgers. He's throwing in the high 90s fastball. His slider is just eating up the Dodgers. He gives up a cheap base hit. And the manager comes out, pulls his ace, and goes to a reliever that's been having problems in the playoffs and postseason. I don't know what he was thinking. I know that the managers of the old sure wouldn't do that. If your ace, if that's your number one guy, he's keeping the other team at bay. He's only at 73 pitches. What is the guy thinking? I mean, how can he justify taking out your number one pitcher in Game 6, win or lose the series, and putting in a reliever, Doc?
I agree with you 100%. I actually wrote a piece on the Start Spreading the News. I think the one thing, I'm going to turn this into a Yankee talk and then bring it back to the Dodgers, because I think and the Tampa Bay Rays, because I think it all sort of goes together. I think teams sometimes get way too hung up on the analytics. And I'm not saying there's not a point for all that. I think there's a lot of validity to looking at trends and launch angles and all of the batting average on ball and play, pitchers going through a lineup for the third time, and you look at the numbers. I think Aaron Boone falls victim to that. And one of the things I wrote for the Yankee blog was I would bring Aaron Boone back as the Yankee manager. This will be his 3rd season, and it's about time that he have a chance to really make his mark on the team. But the thing I think the Yankees have been lacking is, like you just said, that old time baseball voice, like a Don Zimmer type sitting next to Joe Torre. Somebody who looks at the game without looking at the stats. And not necessarily that you don't look at the stats and the analytics, but that you actually also have a different perspective, someone to challenge the thinking of the manager. And I think what Kevin Cash did was he looked at his book. He said the 3rd time through the order for Blake Snell, he doesn't do as well, and he loses all sense of common sense. And he goes, well, that means I have to take him out. He gave up a hit. And I think if they had maybe a different type of voice on the bench, somebody that could challenge his thinking, he might have said, leave him in. You never know. Every game is different. And actually, that's what I want for the Yankees. I want them to get an old sage, a smart old baseball guy to sit next to Boone and to just challenge his thinking, like I say, like Don Zimmer did for Joe Torre.
Buck Showalter sounds good for that. But
Yeah, Jack.
I would love that,
let me
but
tell you, Doc, there've been I mentioned on the past show earlier this week, there were a couple of other instances where you ignore analytics and it backfires as well. Look at the 2015 World Series. Matt Harvey enters the 9th inning. Terry Collins wanted to go to the bullpen immediately, but Matt Harvey was pitching so great, and he talks Terry Collins into leaving him in, and he gives up a couple of hits, and the Royals wind up winning that game, the 5th game, winning the World Series. Now, had he taken Harvey out in the beginning of the inning and the bullpen blew it, Terry Collins, the criticism would have been off the rails. I remember the 1987 World Series where I questioned a move in a Game 7 when the Cardinals were playing the Minnesota Twins. Frank Viola had, I believe, a 4-2 lead going into the 9th inning, and Viola looked great. He was the equivalent of Blake Snell, their ace, so on. And Tom Kelly took him out, wouldn't let him start the 9th inning, even though Viola was cruising along, and he put in Jeff Reardon. And he said, well, Jeff's been our closer all year long. But if Jeff Reardon blew that lead, Tom Kelly never would have lived that down. And I understand what you're saying. I would have left Blake Snell in, absolutely. No question about it. But they have a plan, these managers. They know exactly what they're going to do. And,
but I think that's my point. I think they have the plan outside of the actual events that are happening on the field. If X, then Y. And listen, every plan, whether you have an old school baseball guy or a new school, whether you go money ball or whatever you do, no plan is going to be perfect. My whole point is I just think they need to, at times, step back and let the game dictate what happens rather than the numbers. And again, you made some great points about moves that didn't work. Hey, the Yankees went to Mariano Rivera in the 2001 World Series. It didn't work. A couple of bloops. The Yankees lose the game. He makes an error, throws the ball away. I mean, these things happen. I just think that when you have an entire organization that's built on one philosophy, you're probably going to get burned over time. And it's better in any organization to have people who challenge the conventional thinking, who are part of your organization, who just make you think, get a little outside the box. And I think in that Game 6 in the World Series, somebody with a different perspective might have said, "Look, give him another batter or two. You never know."
Well,
and again, it could have blown up, but
all I know, guys, is that the Dodgers were smiling when they took Snell out. So let's get to some Yankee news real quick before we get to the first debate. Yankees did make some moves, Doc. They did not opt for the Gardner final year contract at the $10 million. Not saying he can't sign, but they're not going to sign him at $10 million. Britton was blocked from going anywhere. They did lock him up for, I think, the next 2 years. And then AJ Happ, they didn't pick up his option, which I'm kind of glad about. Again, I guess they could sign him at a cheaper rate if nobody makes an offer for him. But already the Yankees are making moves. And what do you think about those 3 moves, Doc?
Real quickly, J.A. Happ did not deserve to come back. I don't believe he did not have a very good year. And I don't think he's worth $17 million at a different price point. I actually have high hopes for J.A. Happ becoming like a Jamie Moyer pitcher who just sticks around forever and somehow wins 20 games in his 40s. I could see that happening with him. I don't see him as an essential piece of the 2021 Yankees if they want to win the World Series. Brett Gardner also didn't have a great year, and I don't think he's a $10 million ball player, so the Yankees exercise his option. And again, they could bring him back at a cheaper rate. And I'm thrilled to bringing back Zach Britton because the Yankees need to have a strong bullpen, and he's an essential piece.
Definitely.
Yeah, Brett Gardner actually would be a $7.5 million ball player if they brought him back because they have to give him $2.5 million as a buyout. And he's no more than a reserve outfielder now. He'll probably be injured. If guys aren't injured, it's going to limit his playing time. So is he worth $7.5 million? Chances are they can go out and get a reserve outfielder for, $3-4 million who has some quality. So I think they're going to settle with Brett Gardner. Unless some team surprises Brett Gardner in free agency and someone gives him like a 2-year, $16 million contract, then Brett Gardner on his own might bolt. And we'll miss him. He was a wonderful Yankee.
No doubt. So with that, guys, we're going to get into our first topic of debate, and we're going to name me, Jack, and even Doc's going to participate in this one. The greatest outfielder in New York, Boston, or Philadelphia history. And Jack, you're up first with the topic.
Well, I'm going first. There's only one guy to name, the Yankee Clipper, Joe DiMaggio. Now, Joe DiMaggio, if you look at the sum totals of his career numbers, it's unfair. He served 3 years in the military during his prime. So you would have had to add those 3 years on. Also, he was a right-handed batter at Yankee Stadium. That's difficult. I mean, as it is, he had 361 home runs, but Bill James of Moneyball fame said DiMaggio was the biggest victim of his own home ballpark of any play in baseball history as far as power numbers went. There were so many balls he hit, to the warning tracks, so on. There would have been homers elsewhere. He hit 325 anyway over his career. Let me tell you, what impresses me most about his hitting streak wasn't the 56 games. He hit successfully 72 out of 73. When his 56-game hitting streak ended because he was robbed on a couple of good plays by the Indian third baseman Ken Keltner, DiMaggio went on and hit in 16 straight games after that. How many great players over their whole career hit in 16 straight games even one time? This guy started a new hitting streak. I mean, absolutely amazing. I mean, he was an all-star every year of his career, all 13 years. Now, DiMaggio's career would have lasted longer had he hung around like some of the other great players and just compiled numbers. But after he hit 263 in his last year, he didn't want to be a 250 hitter, hit 18 to 20 homers, do it 5-6 more years. He had too much pride in his game, Joe D. And Joe D, he was a 3-time MVP, a 2-time batting champion, 2-time RBI leader. We could go like on and on and on. But the thing about Joe DiMaggio, he was the greatest defensive center fielder ever. But you won't catch that on the highlight reels. You won't see any great DiMaggio catches on the highlight reels because he was too good to dive. I mean, the way he positioned himself, the guy was so graceful. And I'll give you an example. We talk about, let me finish this up, talk show hosts. This is a talk show. Doc Mackey. Remember when Art Rust had the talk show on ABC? Art Rust was African-American. He was big on racial issues and on and on and on. But they asked him, who was the greatest living ball player ever saw? And he said, I'm sorry to say this for guys like Willie Mays or so on. Sorry, Willie, but Joe D's my guy. The greatest ball player I ever saw. And Mickey Mantle backed that up as well.
Well, Jack, I'm glad you brought up Willie Mays. And, of course, we do know who we're picking before we debate here. So with all due respect to Joltin' Joe, because he was truly a great center fielder, a legend in baseball, how can you not say it's a say-hey kid, Willie Mays? That's who you think about. When you say center field, the first person that pops into your mind is Willie Mays. Not only was he a legend, and he started with the Giants and ended his career with the Mets, he had a lifetime batting average of 302, 1,903 RBIs, and 660 home runs. And arguably, Jack, the greatest catch in baseball history. When you see the films, and they have these films that show supposedly the best and greatest catches of all times, you see Willie Mays with his back to the home plate, running at full speed towards the wall and catching the ball over his shoulder, and even stopping and throwing the ball back in. The man stole bases. He was a 4-tool player. I mean, listen, you could even argue that a valid argument that Joe DiMaggio wasn't the greatest center fielder on the Yankees. You could argue that Mickey Mantle was even better than Joe DiMaggio as a center fielder on the Yankees. For achievements, he had 24 All-Star appearances, a World Series champ, MVP twice in the World Series, and one of those World Series they lost, Jack. I mean, they lose the World Series, and he still gets MVP. Joe DiMaggio may not be the greatest center fielder in the history of baseball, but man, this guy was something else. And like I said, with all due respect to Joe DiMaggio, his great career, his hitting streaks, his clutch hitting, his great play, there's only one center fielder I think of when somebody says center field, who's the greatest? Willie Mays pops right into my head. There you go.
Am I rebutting or is that going?
Oh, if you'd like to, go right
I
ahead.
will rebut. You mean the greatest center fielder in California baseball history, because he played the majority of his career for the San Francisco Giants. The New York Giants moved at that time. And certainly when he played 8 years in New York,
Right.
6 with the New York Giants, the last couple with the New York Mets. As far as that over-the-shoulder catch over the ball hit by Vic Wertz, I think it was in the 1954 World Series. Cody Bellinger does that all the time now. Okay, that was in an era where things were first starting. That's like saying, oh, Wilt Chamberlain, watch him dunk the basketball. All the guys are doing it now. Okay, Willie was great, fantastic. He's on the short list of the greatest players of all time. Willie was, maybe the most charismatic player that ever played in New York, perhaps. Okay, we could say that. I'm not going to denigrate Willie Mays. He was unbelievable. But I want to hear Doc's choice, and then I'll say, one more thing in regard to Willie Mays.
Sure.
All right, Jack, you actually made a great point. The Giants moved to San Francisco, in 1958? So saying that Willie Mays was the greatest, I guess you have to parse the words here, right? Who is the greatest center fielder? Probably Willie Mays. Who is the greatest center fielder in New York? Maybe not Willie Mays, because he didn't play long enough in New York, and by the time he came back as a Met, his career was basically over. Just for fun, I was going to argue the Mickey Mantle point. When you look at numbers like WAR and WAR 7, Mickey Mantle seems to outshine DiMaggio. And so DiMaggio's lifetime WAR was, I don't know my glasses on here. So it's, I think 64 point, no. You know what? I'm not going to go with those numbers because I can't see them well enough without my glasses on.
Analytics a little while ago, Doc, and now you're sticking with analytics.
I am. You know what? I'm going to bring those numbers next week. I got a shadow on the paper, and I can't quite see them. But the point is that Mantle, it has been said, even though he didn't have the batting average that DiMaggio have, because he did stick around longer. And Mantle always said that last season, if he had realized that season was going to be the thing that cost him his lifetime 300 batting average, he would have never played. Mantle had speed. Mantle was a multiple-time MVP winner. Mantle was a multiple-time World Series champion. Mantle won a Triple Crown. And I just think there's a great argument that Mickey Mantle could have been, or is, or was, just as good of a player as Joe DiMaggio. I'm going to come those numbers next week, though. I have to do better with my lighting down here.
And before Jack comes back and tries to hit me again, Jack, listen, we're saying who was the greatest center field or in New York, in the local area, Red Sox, Phillies, and New York. I don't care if Willie Mays didn't play as long as Joe DiMaggio. It wasn't his fault that they sold the team to San Francisco. He was along for the ride. He would have stayed in New York. That is not his fault. And the years he played for the Mets, he was unbelievable. He stole 338 bases, Jack. This man was a four-tool player. There is no way that you can even defensively. Not that Joe DiMaggio wasn't great. He wasn't great as Willie Mays. I mean, now you're just kidding yourself. And as Doc said, I could argue that Mickey Mantle was even better than Joe DiMaggio on the Yankees. So, I mean, you've got to agree that when you say center fielder and local history, it's Willie Mays. There's no other center fielder.
Bill James looked at the numbers of Mantle and Mays during their primes when Mantle was still productive, not the last few years. And based on all of Bill James' numbers, he said Mantle was better, and he said it wasn't even close. So now you're going
to go with time limits. Before we weren't going with time limits, and now you're going to say in his prime and for those few years. We're talking about over their career, Jack. We're saying over their career, who was the greatest center fielder of all time?
8 years is a lot of years, and Mays did not even hit 300 the last 8 years of his career.
And still batted over 302.
That's 8 years. That's a lot of years.
And still
batted. Better hitting ballpark
And
that was catered to him. The Polo Grounds in Candlestick Park were better hitting ballparks than where, Joe DiMaggio is as a right-handed batter at Yankee Stadium. That was
Yes.
Death Valley out there for him.
I don't disagree with that, Jack, but that adds up to a lot more doubles than it does in other parks too, Jack, does it not?
A lot more doubles.
Yeah, because you're hitting that out.
DiMaggio hit it. Yeah, right.
All right. Okay, there you go. So anyway,
No one offered Willie Mays a contract like Mr. Coffee the way they did Joe D, because they knew, what Joe.
Willie Mays had a cartoon, so there you go. Anyway,
Next week I'll bring those numbers. I want to look at those
I'm
numbers.
curious.
I think the doc might have won that debate. I'll tell you the truth.
Listen, let's compromise and say it's the Mick. He was my idol growing up. Okay.
I mean,
You know what? You
I'm
can't pick a wrong guy when you're talking about Mays, Mantle, and DiMaggio. I mean, who wouldn't want any of them?
Isn't that
Can you
true?
imagine all three when the outfield? Who would? Let me ask you guys this very quickly. Let's
Sure.
say you were the manager. Who would be your center fielder? It would have to be Mays or DiMaggio. Mantle would be in either right or left field. Who would be a center fielder if you had all three and you had to play them in the outfield?
Well,
Great question.
I picked I picked Willie Mays, so I'd have to go with him. I'd probably throw DiMaggio in left and Mantle in right. That's probably
Joe's D's ego and personality wouldn't go for that. He'd have to be in center field. I think Willie would defer to him.
maybe so.
Yeah.
So anyway, we got to let Dr. Paul Semendinger go again. A great blog he has with Start Spreading the News. If you're a Yankee fan, I mean, it's a don't miss blog. He's an award-winning author. Scattering the Ashes has been selling. He got an award for that. And if you get a chance, pick up that book. And it's a great human story to go along with a little bit of marathon running in there somewhere. I mean, it's more about the story between a father and son. And it's a great book, guys. Go out there and get it. And go to Start Spreading the News. Again, Doctor, thank you for coming in, and we'll see you next week.
I hope so.
Dude,
All right,
thanks.
that sounds great. Have a great day, Doc. And again,
You too. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. So there you go, Jack, the great Dr. Paul Semendinger with his great analyst and a great baseball mind. I mean, he knows a lot about the history of baseball, period. So
I
Jack,
love having him on.
Jack, guess what? We've got our first trivia question coming up for Halloween. So there you go, Jack. We got to make sure the screen's right for this question. I don't want to see your reaction. You can see in the bottom. You can't see me. Okay, Jack. So who played point guard for St. John's from 1987 to 1990? And remember, this is with a Halloween theme.
I would say Mark Jackson, right?
Who?
Mark Jackson, point
Remember,
guard.
Halloween theme, Jack. Think of Halloween.
Point guard for St. John's University.
Right, from
Mark
1987.
Jackson, I think, was drafted in '86. So no, it couldn't have been him. Would it have been Ron Artest?
No, sir. It's Boo. Get it? Boo Henry.
Boo Henry. You got
Yes,
it.
sir. So there you go. So right along with our trivia theme, of course, the name Boo is what the noise of ghost is
Boo
supposed to be.
Henry. I don't think. Boo Henry on Halloween.
Yes. So that's how the
Ron
trivia.
Artest did some crazy things like running into the stands and
Right.
setting off a melee and.
Right. So, but anyway, remember when I ask these questions, it's going to be a Halloween theme,
Halloween
Jack.
theme.
Yes, sir. So be ready for that. So our next topic of debate, as I'm rummaging through my notes here, is going to be. I think we're going with the most underrated player in New York, Boston, Philadelphia history, Jack. And I get to go first. Now, while this man is in the Hall of Fame and he is somewhat noted, he is not given the recognition or the spotlight when you talk about the greatest pitchers in history, Jack. When you talk about the first name of the word lefty. Everybody thinks of Lefty Gomez. They go right to Lefty Gomez. When this man, Lefty Grove, was a pitcher for the Philadelphia A's and the Boston Red Sox. And believe it or not, they weren't always in Oakland. They were once located in Philadelphia. And did they have a pitcher, when I say the name Lefty Grove? I don't even hear that. When they talk about pitchers, Jack, this man was awesome. I mean, he could have been better than Lefty Gomez, the forgotten ace of the Philadelphia A's that recorded 300 wins in 17 years. Was AL, he won, he was the winner in 4 separate seasons. He won more games than anybody. In strikeouts, he led the league 7 years in a row. Had the league's lowest ERA 19 times. He led the A's to 3 straight championships. But who talks about Lefty Grove, Jack? Nobody talks about Lefty Grove. Not only was he a 6-time All-Star, but was the AL ERA leader 9 times. Are you kidding me? I mean, this man had 20 wins 5 years in a row, over 2,000 strikeouts, and only gets voted in the Hall of Fame by 74%, Jack. I mean, you have pitchers with less records, with less accomplishments than that, going in first ballot at 90-something%. I mean, are you kidding me, Jack? How can we not, when we sit here and we talk about the greatest pitchers in New York history, and we will be talking about that eventually, how can Lefty Grove not be number one?
Mac, you don't follow the rules. So you set the rules, the guidelines to whatever's convenient for you. Underrated means not given the recognition that someone deserves. That's
right.
What underrated means.
Right.
The man has a plaque in Cooperstown. He's
right.
a Hall of Famer. They
right.
recognize his greatness. He wouldn't have been inducted in the Hall of Fame. As far as your percentage, Babe Ruth didn't get 100%. The only one in baseball history who got 100% of the Hall of Fame vote was Mariano Rivera.
Right.
I mean, all the greats didn't get 100% vote. The percentage was a little down.
We're talking
great. Listen,
74%.
It's his era. It's his era. We're living in the year 2020. The players from Lefty Grove's time, like Walter Johnson and so on, and Bob Feller, who came a little after, and Christy Mathewson, they're not given the recognition today because a lot of years have passed by. It's like that in all sports when you talk about great players. I mean, but Lefty Grove, everyone knew how great he was during his time. He was given the recognition, and he's in the Hall of Fame. Now, I believe when you talk about underrated, let's talk about someone who's truly not given the recognition he deserves. People aren't even aware he exists. Who were we talking about before? The great Joe DiMaggio. That's not who I'm going to mention now, of course. Let me just clear my throat one little second. Here goes. Who hits the ball and makes it go? Dominic DiMaggio, who runs the bases fast, not slow. Dominic DiMaggio, who hits the ball and makes it go, who runs the bases fast, not slow, who's better than his brother Joe. Dominic DiMaggio. Now, he wasn't better than his brother Joe, but he came darn close at times. Dom DiMaggio, the center fielder for the Boston Red Sox, 1940 to 1953. He had to serve 3 years during his prime in the military. And then his last season, he only got up a handful of times. He played 10 full seasons, made the All-Star team 7 times. And you want to know something? He was better than brother Joe on the bases. In 1950, Dominic DiMaggio led the American League in stolen bases. Another year, he led it in triples. For 2 years out of his career, he led the league in runs scored. He was an outstanding defensive fielder. He led the league in certain categories, certain years. And the amazing part about it, talk about Joe D's hitting streak. Dom DiMaggio holds the Boston Red Sox hitting streak at 34. And guess what? It would have been higher, and who knows how high it would have went. But brother Joe robbed him of a hit when they played the Yankees, and that ended Dom's hitting streak. We don't talk about, when we talk about Dom DiMaggio, if you told anyone he had a brother, they'd say, oh, he has a brother who played baseball. He had another one, Vince, as well, who wasn't quite as well. Dom DiMaggio was great. Ted Williams, who was his teammate, always used to rave about him, but he was overshadowed by his brother Joe. So the most underrated player in local history, not given his due historically, is Dom DiMaggio.
I mean, you are correct to a point that Dom DiMaggio was a great baseball player. I agree with that. I know about Dom DiMaggio and how well he played for the Red Sox with Ted Williams. Listen, though, Jack, only thing I'm saying about Lefty Grove is when we talk about the great pitchers of all time, when we start talking about Sandy Koufax, and this is from a long time ago, Jack. We talk about Bob Gibson. We talk about, Tom Seaver. And his stats, in a lot of cases, are better than theirs. And nobody talks about Lefty Grove. They talk about Lefty Gomez. I don't know why. It's just because of the name. Lefty Gomez sounds more fun. Lefty Gomez was a great pitcher. I'm not taking nothing away from him. All I'm saying is for a man to make the Hall of Fame, a man to accomplish all he did, nobody even mentions him. I've never heard one sports announcer, one commentator, when they're talking about the great pitchers of all time throughout history, mention Lefty Grove. I don't get it. And this is what I mean by underrated. He is not given credit for his accomplishments as he should. They talk about Nolan Ryan. Lefty Grove kills Nolan Ryan in stats, and that was a while ago. I just don't understand how people that's supposed to know baseball, are supposed to be historians in baseball, don't even mention this man's name. And that's why I'm saying he's underrated, Jack.
I have a compromise where I'll agree with you to his point. One of the most underrated Hall of Famers is Lefty Grove. Of all the guys in the Hall of Fame, you can make an argument he's the most underrated, looking at his accomplishments like winning 31 games one year, so on. But somehow when a guy's in the Hall of Fame, I don't like to see him in the underrated category. I like to see guys who aren't in the Hall of Fame.
I understand that.
But Lefty Grove is one of the most underrated Hall of Famers.
And
I'll throw you a bone there, man.
And I agree with Dom DiMaggio. I mean, I think that when we're talking about great, center fielders and Boston Red Sox, Dom DiMaggio should come up a lot more. It's just that the popularity of Joe DiMaggio kind of puts him in the shadow. And it's a shame because he was a very solid and in some cases great ball player.
Well, if you want to think of how good Dom DiMaggio was, I'll give you the best comparison. Put him on a par with Johnny Damon over his career. Basically the same thing. Maybe he was a little better than Damon.
I think he was.
Say they were very close. And Damon was a heck of a player.
Okay, Jack. So here we go again. I hope you're ready, Jack, because I'm gonna be throwing this at you all day, Jack.
If I miss a couple more, no more of this nonsense about me being a historian. I never buy into that anyway.
Gotcha. So, Jack, for our next Halloween trivia question, the tight end from Notre Dame who went on to have a Hall of Fame career, what was his name, Jack?
Man, oh man, I'm having a brain cramp now. Thinking of a Halloween theme.
Right.
Ay.
Hall of Famer, Jack. One of the greatest tight ends ever to play football.
I'm stumped here. I don't know why. A complete brain cramp. Wait, give me a second more. 49ers, right?
No, sir.
Go.
Okay, so from Notre Dame, the great Dave Casper.
With the Raiders.
Man. Yes,
what a great Raider. One of the greatest Raiders in history. Oh,
yeah.
Man.
Unbelievable player. Yes, sir.
Casper. He was great.
Wasn't he? So, Jack, we're going to get on to our next big
Yeah,
topic, and this is a hot one. Should the New York Giants trade Saquon Barkley, Jack? A question that some fans are having asking themselves. And what do you think about that, Jack?
You really mean, Matt, the day the man is having surgery, you're asking that question, and you as a GM would probably move on from him today, just trade him away and break the news to him. The guy gets up from surgery and he's told, oh, the GM Mac has moved you to whoever, you know. And of course you don't get rid of Saquon Barkley. Of course you stick with him. And there are a variety of reasons. One, he's proven he can do it on a high level. He was Rookie of the Year a couple of years ago. He's already proven he's an elite NFL back. That's number one. Number two, what are you going to get for him coming off this injury? You're not going to get equal value. At best, you're going to get a late first-round draft choice. And whoever you get with that pick isn't going to be quite as good as Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley has a good attitude with the team. He's not a complainer. He does his job. He's not a prima donna and won't be one no matter how successful he is. He's a good guy, and he's a local guy. We want local boys to succeed. I mean, it adds to the charisma of the team. He needs additional weapons around him, Saquon Barkley. In the absence of good wide receivers and a quality tight end, he wasn't going to be as effective at running back. The other teams were going to get the key on him more. They were keying on Saquon Barkley because he was the Giants' one big weapon. He's still very young, and he was working with a new quarterback in Daniel Jones and a new coach. And Saquon Barkley will be fine coming off this injury. You get quality guys around him. The offensive line wasn't good. You can't be a one-man crew in this. You know, he'll be fine coming off the injury. You absolutely don't move on from him.
Well, last year I would have agreed with you, Jack. I would have said there was no way that you trade Saquon Barkley. I've changed my mind a little bit after the tremendous rookie year you spoke of that he had. But he's been hurt over the last 2 years, Jack. And he's coming up on a huge contract negotiation, re-signings, extensions. You look at the running backs around the league, Gurley, you look at McCaffrey. You look at these people and their production after signing that big contract, they get hurt easy. They end up not playing up to the potential that they came from and what they did in the past. Zeke Elliott, there's a drop in production. He just signed a huge contract. I love Saquon Barkley. I'm not going to say that that I'm in any way would be happy with it. Derrick Henry, still productive with a great offensive line. Saquon Barkley doesn't have that right now. You say that they would get a late first-round draft choice. I disagree with that, Jack, because of what you're saying, of what kind of player he is and what kind of potential he has. I think you could get a few draft choices for Saquon Barkley. You see other teams with less talented running backs running the ball effectively, some by committee. The league has changed to more of a passing than running league. Saquon has great hands. I understand that. There are a lot of running backs out there with great hands. This is his prime of his career, even though he had an injury. This is the only time that you're going to get trade worth for Saquon Barkley. And Jack, it hurts me to say this because I love the guy. I think he's an outstanding individual. I think when he's healthy, he's one of the top 4 or 5 backs in the league. I agree with all that. But he's coming up on a contract, and no matter how humble he is, I guarantee you his agent ain't that humble, and they're going to be shooting for a lot of money. And we have seen what has happened in the league with running backs getting a lot of money. So if it's a question of if Saquon's willing to stay on at a small contract, heck yeah. But that's not going to happen, Jack. He's going to want somewhere in that $15 to $18 million a year. And I don't know if that's worth it with his injuries. Being in the league 3 years, hurt twice, Jack.
Well, if Giants move on from him, they're going to have to slot someone else in the position, and they're not going to get anyone as good. So that means the progress of Daniel Jones is going to be hampered to an extent and so on. And Dave Gettleman, as long as he's the GM, they're going to want to stay with Saquon Barkley. He was Barkley's pick. They resisted taking a quarterback with the second overall pick in the draft to take Saquon Barkley and to move on from him after 3 years, considering how great he was that first year. Some people were actually even saying he was the best running back in the NFL after the first year. That's how good he was.
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't want to hear he regressed. It's the players around you. You don't have the blocking. You're not, and you don't have, the right weapons around you on offense to free up a little bit. You're not going to be effective. And he was hurt this year. He'll come into camp next year. He'll be new. He'll be raring to go. It's going to be a better Giant team. They would have addressed the offensive line a little more, gotten a quality wide receiver. Perhaps Evan Ingram's performance will improve at tight end. So he'll have the guys around him. And you stick with a guy like Saquon Barkley. You just don't give up on him. You just milk him out. And you say multiple draft choices. If you're talking about a number 2, a number 4, and a number 5, that doesn't do it for me.
Yeah.
Okay? If you talk about getting a pick, maybe in the top, 12, which I doubt, that's not going to happen. I'll listen then. Okay.
Yeah.
But for what they're going to get in return, no.
So
Absolutely.
I think we agree more than disagree on this, Jack. All I'm saying is if they're going to be wanting a big contract in that area, I'd say no, don't do it. If he's willing to go with a medium contract and stay on with the Giants and can prove that he can play all year, definitely. I'd give him another year to prove that to me. But, again, injured twice in 3 years and some great players, Jack, I don't care how great they are, talented they are, they get injured and their career ends or slows down. And we're going to have to see what happens next year, what's going to happen with already 2 injuries in 3 years. So I'm going to hit you with a Halloween story right now, Jack, not a trivia. Okay. So in baseball, game 4 of the 2001 World Series, as I imagine you remember, on Halloween, after Tito Martinez sent the game into extra innings with a 2-game tying home run, on Halloween, a few minutes after midnight, Derek Jeter hits the walk-off home run to become Mr. November. So that happened on Halloween. After midnight, Derek Jeter gets his nickname. So
He's
that's
going to hold on to that title because there might be no more World Series games in November. So it's
right.
Yeah.
Right, 100% right. So, Reggie Jackson with Mr. October, Derek becomes Mr. November.
Let me tell you, can I say something about the 1977 World Series? We're talking Halloween. I don't know whether you believe the witches, the goblins, and all that superstitious stuff, but what entered my mind, I was at that game in 1977 and Reggie hit 3 homers. Think of it, 1977 was the 50-year anniversary from the 1927 legendary New York Yankee team.
Wow.
Early in that final game, Yankee first baseman Chris Chambliss hit a home run. Who was the Yankee first baseman in 50 years before? Lou Gehrig.
Wow.
Reggie, the right fielder, hit 3 home runs. Who was the right fielder for the 27 Yankees? Babe Ruth. Reggie's last homer, the third one, was a Babe Ruth special into the center field stands.
Wow, isn't that crazy?
Think of it, right? That crossed my mind. Yeah.
Right.
I think that was a reincarnation of Derek and Ruth, 50-year anniversary, so on.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. A great story, Jack. We're going to go ahead and we're going to take our first commercial here, break, quick 3.5 minutes. Stay with us, guys. We'll be back with more of our debates and some more Halloween trivia and stories. Maybe Jack will sing us another tune. I don't know, but it would be very interesting.
I don't think my voice could tolerate it.
I mean, I was surprised you didn't sing the Joltin' Joe DiMaggio song, Jack, because that's
Joe didn't need any support. He could stand on his own merits. Tom DiMaggio needed like a boost. That's what the Red Sox fans used to sing. I should have mentioned that. They would sing that, to campaign for their guy. They thought their guy, that they had the best center field in baseball, better than Joe.
Well, listen, he was
Joe
he
DiMaggio was the best. You
he
know?
was, yeah, but Dom was a hell of a center fielder. So we'll be back right after this, folks, and 3.5 minutes. Come back and join us, please.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma. I love you too.
Okay, how about tasting this stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye, Dad.
Bye-bye.
Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again?
Alex is just
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed. Yeah, well, Kyle's not here. How come? Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah. 0 tolerance. Not for the season.
Come on, it's a first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I've made it clear to Matt that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's gonna be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he gonna know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it though, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Try.
How you doing, folks? And welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. Thanks for sticking with us through our brief commercial. And you know what that means? That music, Jack, as I've been have been telling you here, that's our next trivia question.
I'm going to tell you, I have a feeling this isn't my day because missing Dave Casper, I don't have it today. And Dave Casper, if we were doing a West Coast show, Mac,
Right?
he would be maybe one of the most underrated players because when you think of great tight ends, you just don't think of Dave Casper, but he was one. The way he could go up and get the ball, and great blocker as well.
Very true, Jack. So let me hit you with another trivia, and we've mentioned this man before on the program, so this might be easier for you. This pitcher threw a no-hitter for the San Francisco Giants in 1976.
John the Count Montefusco.
See, never give up, Jack.
It's
You- I knew-
Halloween, the Count.
The Count,
John
exactly.
the Count Montefusco. And the Giants haven't had like a lot of no-hitters. And the Count, he was a charismatic pitcher. I have to look up his final career stats. When I have a chance, I'm going to look it up. He was really good for a few years. Didn't have that long career. But
Yeah.
as far as being a top-of-the-line pitcher,
I'm
he
trying
was
to
a fun guy. He liked to have a lot of fun and joked away. No one could hit him. He boasted.
I'm trying to remember. Mark the Bird Fidrich. You remember him?
He talked to the ball.
He talked to the baseball during the game. I mean, he was a total nut on the mound and a good pitcher too. I mean, he was a good pitcher for a little while. I mean, he wasn't a longevity kind of guy, but for a few years he pitched the ball really well, and he was a lot of fun to watch, Jack.
Well, you have these guys who have a great start of their career and they become a phenom. Remember when Vida Blue first started out? He was like an ace. He was great. He was the talk of baseball. And then after his rookie year, in which he was sensational, he had a squabble with Charlie Finley, the Oakland Athletic owner, over a contract. At that time, there was no free agency. So Charlie Finley helped engineer the start of free agency by saying to Vida Blue, he said, Blue, either you take my offer, you're out of baseball. That didn't go over too well with the courts.
Yeah, no doubt. And you brought up before we started our debates, Steve Cohen taking over as manager of the Mets, and since we are a local sports coverage, we do New York, Boston, and Philadelphia. I'd like to get back into that with you. I think this gives Mets a lot of hope, especially Met fans a lot of hope, bringing in an owner who's a multi-billionaire who is also a Mets fan. I think he'll do well by them. But I want the Mets fans to temper their expectations a little bit. It's not like next year he's going to come in and the team's going to go to the World Series. They still got to build a team. They still got to I'm not going to say rebuild their farm system, but they do have some issues down there that they got to work out to bring forth better players from the farm system, either to play on the team or to use as trade bait. They did have a couple young rookies that came up and played well with the Mets this year. So, what are your thoughts on that, Jack? I mean, and before you go, I want to reinforce. Listen. The Mets and Yankees are not really rivals. For New York newspapers, yes. For bragging rights of New York, yes. But they don't play each other. They're not in the same division. They're not in the same league. Our rivals, for the most part, are the Boston Red Sox when they're good. The Mets are pretty much the Braves when they're both good. The Braves originally coming from Boston. So those are really the rivalries of those teams in baseball in their divisions. I understand the sport. I understand the publication, the publicity. I get all that. I'm just saying that, for the Mets fans out there, which I do follow the Mets, I've been following them since 1967, to kind of temper their expectations for this year, Jack.
I think Steve Cohen should have a honeymoon period of 1 year. I think if the Met fans expect him to just dive in and sign a couple of high-profile free agents like J.J. Realmuto from the Phillies,
right,
and George Springer from the Astros, I just feel it would be unfair. He's incurring a lot of debt. That's why the Wilpons are selling the team. The Wilpons didn't want to sell the Mets. It was more out of necessity. They were losing, in the hundreds of millions. And he's wiping that debt out. He's also paying employees from the pandemic who weren't getting paid retroactively. He has to clear up a big mess on the books this year. And he is a businessman. I know he's a big Met fan from childhood, so on. But give him a honeymoon period this year. Let him clear up the financial situation the best he can. He understands he's losing a lot of money this first year, but don't expect him to just throw crazy money at players. And the problem with fans, they're playing with monopoly money.
Right.
Steve Cohen is playing with real money. Okay.
Right.
And this is going to be, but with that said, in the long run, this is going to be a good thing for Met fans because I believe he's going to make some really good signings. But who knows what's in his mind? He might be a tightwad at the end of the day. And Met fans are going to be very disappointed. We don't know what Steve Cohen is really thinking. Mac, because he's got $14 billion and he's the wealthiest owner in sports, people are assuming he's going to spend it. But Mac, let me ask you, do you know any people with a lot of money, but they're really cheap?
Yeah, that's how they got a lot of money, Jack.
That's how they got a lot of money.
Right. It's not all about taking chances. A lot of it has to do with being thrifty, or if you want to say cheap, or you want to say, a tightwad, whatever it is. I mean, they got to where they are for a reason, and it's not just because they won the lottery. This guy built businesses and got some look-ats and some investigations against them because of his businesses. So he doesn't have the cleanest past, of any owner. And I guess all businessmen have some kind of investigations put in them because of the money they make.
Yeah.
I just, again, my grandfather was a loyal Mets fan all his life. And I used to sit down and watch the games with him. So I've been, even though I'm all Yankee fan, big Yankee fan, I am a baseball fan first. And then I go to the locals and the Mets I've been following since I was a kid, the Red Sox because of the rivalry, and even the Phillies, I have followed them to a point. So, I mean, listen, I again, a true Yankee fan, but I would love to see the Mets do real good this year and the following years. And I hope Steve Cohen provides them some kind of avenue to getting better. I think the Mets had an overall solid team last year. I just don't think it was put together. And how can you figure one of your top rotation pitchers is going to opt out and another one's going to get injured? Things happen and it affects the whole team. And
Raul Muto didn't have such a good year for the Phillies last year. And Springer's, I think, about 33 years old. And to give him these big, giant contracts that are going to be bad at the back end of it isn't the best way to do business.
Right.
But he's also aware, Steve Cohen, people want to see him make a splash.
Definitely.
Come in. Now, even though he should have a honeymoon period, I don't think they're going to give it to him unless he lets everyone know he needs 1 year to clear up the situation. And by next year, things are going to be different. If he says that to Met fans, maybe they'll tolerate it, give him the one year to do his thing. But, or then again, he might just go in and get the best player available. So,
I mean,
had Mike Trout not signed that contract with the Angels, in which you can't condemn Mike Trout signed a great contract, could you imagine if he was on the market and Steve Cohen would feel no one's outbidding me, I'm going $5 million a year over anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, he does have the finances to do that, which the Mets haven't been able to do in recent years.
Just one very quick thing, Matt.
Yes.
What we're not considering with these contracts, the owners have lost a lot of money at the gate. They don't have a live gate. So what we think players should get for their salary, we're basing those numbers based on normalcy.
Sure.
And things aren't normal right now, and we don't know when they're going to be normal.
Very true, Jack. I mean, they lost a lot of money, and this year coming up, who knows? The virus may still be around, and they still may have to make different plans for the season. So before we get into our next debate, which will be the greatest defensive end in the local history of New York, Boston, and Philly, there's another Halloween story I want to get to. And this is another Yankee story. Believe it or not, it's crazy how many stories come up about the Yankees. In Game 3 of 2009, Alex Rodriguez lined down the right field line that appeared to Kareem off the wall, but the ball actually hit the lens of the camera above the yellow line. The first, let me straighten my paper here. The first home run was overturned on review. Andy Pettit, in the next inning, he hits with a 138 batting average, by the way, Jack. He strokes a RBI single to center field with Nick Swisher on base, and the Yankees win. So that happened also on Halloween, Jack. So
they love watching pitchers get a hit. You were speaking of the Mets. There was a Met-Yankee game in which Mariano Rivera at Shea Stadium had a chance to hit.
right.
Either Shea Stadium or Citi Field when they first opened. I'm not sure. May have been Citi Field. But their men on second and third, 2 outs. But Rivera's place in the order was right after Derek Jeter. Derek Jeter comes up to the plate, figuring they're going to walk him for sure.
Sure.
The Mets were too slow to give the signal to the pitcher. So the pitcher's pitching to Jeter on the first pitch. Jeter steps out of the box, ball one, and he's like looking around. He's like shook up. They're actually going to pitch to me and not put me on base, to get to Mariano. So then they walked Jeter after that intentionally. Mariano got up and he drew a walk, Mariano, and got an RBI. But you should have seen the Yankee dugout when Mariano was up. The excitement of watching Mariano at bat, they loved it.
Sure. That's especially with the DH in the American League, to see a pitcher who didn't hit get up there in that situation. So, Jack, let's get to the greatest defensive end in the Locals history. I believe we have two good candidates. And why don't you go ahead and go first, Jack?
Well, there's several candidates, but listen, if you like a deeply religious man, not just off the field, but on the field, you got to go with the Minister of Defense, Reggie White.
Right.
Reggie White, during his prime, and his prime was most of his career, he was compared very favorably to Lawrence Taylor as the best defensive player, but it was different. We're talking about best defensive ends here.
Right.
Okay, because I would go with LT normally as the greatest defensive player, but not by much over Reggie White. It was very close. Reggie White, he played a total of 16 years, but out of his 16 years, 8 of them were with the Philadelphia Eagles. 6 were with the Green Bay Packers. Actually, he played the first 2 years of his career. This was a great trivia question, with the Memphis Showboats of the USFL. So if you want to have an idea of the quality of the USFL, they had some great players.
Yes.
Gene Kelly, Herschel Walker, Doug Flutie, on and on and on. But when Reggie White came to the Philadelphia Eagles, he anchored their defense. He went to 13 Pro Bowls of his career. 3 times he was Defensive Player of the Year. In 1987, there was a strike year that he played for the Eagles. He could only get into 12 games because that's all they had in the strike year. He had 21 sacks in 12 games. That's like a couple of sacks a game. That's unheard of. His 221 and a half sacks is the record. He's the all-time sack leader. And 8 years with the Eagles wasn't as much years as some of the other players did with their careers. He averaged, a sack a game. Never mind that he was great against the run as well. And then he went to the Green Bay Packers and he got his ring. He played 6 years with the Packers, and he finished up a meaningless year with the Carolina Panthers. And when you just look at it, 198 sacks in 232 games over his career. And we're taking into account when his performance maybe was going down a little bit as well. But just one last thing on Reggie White, the influence he had. Lawrence Phillips was a very troubled player. Dick Vermeil drafted him. Lawrence Phillips is since deceased. He lived a violent life, okay? Lawrence Phillips showed up to before a game with the St. Louis Rams when Dick Vermeil coached them. And Dick Vermeil was like a daddy to these guys, like a mentor. He smelled alcohol on Lawrence Phillips' breath. He decided, I have to get rid of him. But being the type of great humanitarian he is, Dick Vermeil called up Mike Holmgren, who was the head coach of the Packers during the time Reggie White played for them. And he said, Lawrence Phillips is so close to turning it around, but he needs help. Take him and put him under the leadership of Reggie White, and that'll straighten him out. That's how revered Reggie White was. And an opposing coach would call and say, put him under the leadership of Reggie White. But for Reggie White's 8 years with the Eagles, he was totally dominant.
And you know, I agree with mostly everything you say there. And before I start with my pick, I want to give Michael Strahan, who was a tremendous defensive end for the New York Giants. He didn't make it as my pick, but he could have been there. And Robustelli was a close one too. I mean, two great Giant defensive ends.
Sam Huff, Mac, too.
Sam Huff, the middle linebacker, Jack.
Middle linebacker, yeah.
Okay. But I mean,
right.
Those two defensive ends were tremendous, especially Michael Strahan. But if I had to pick a defensive end to start my team with, Jack, and I only had one choice, I would have to go with Bruce Smith of the Buffalo Bills. I mean, you talked about Reggie White's 21 sacks during the strike year. He was playing against players that they basically picked up off the street so that they continued to play. He was the NFL defensive player in 1990 and 1996. He has the NFL record with 200 career sacks. He was the leader of a defense that went to the Super Bowl 4 times. And I might say not a great defense. And he played his heart out. He had speed. He had strength. He led a team and was mainly, I would say, one of the top 2 reasons that defense played good at all. He forced 46 fumbles. He had 2 interceptions, 15 fumble recoveries. And again, this is not a slight against Reggie White, who I think, is definitely one of the top defensive ends in history, or Michael Strahan. But Bruce Smith did go to 4 Super Bowls. He was Player of the Year. He does lead the league, or in the history, he does have the most sacks. He did go to Washington. He did okay there. But Bruce Smith was definitely a Buffalo Bill. And he was a terror out there, Jack, with his fumble recoveries and forcing fumbles against the run. He was a great athlete. Not as big as Reggie as far as weight-wise. He was like 280 pounds, a little bit smaller, a little bit faster. And if I had to start a team and I had to pick one defensive end in the history of the locals, Jack, it would have to be Bruce Smith.
Now, you said Bruce Smith played in 4 Super Bowls. He showed up for only one of them, the first one. I mean, Bruce Smith was in a position where they badly needed him to provide leadership. And at times he did, but the switch would sometimes get shut off. Unlike Reggie White, who was animated all the time, where his leadership was always on display, Bruce Smith's wasn't. Super Bowl 4, people forget. All they know is the final score, where the Bills lost 30-13 and the game wasn't in doubt at the end. The Bills were leading 13-6 at the half. And what I noticed, and what Troy Aikman, the quarterback of the Cowboys, noticed, when both teams were walking into the locker room, he noticed the Bills were slumping like they were losing the game. They were up 7 points, but their attitude, they weren't animated. That's when they needed Bruce Smith to step up, be like a J.J. Watt type, animated, have your team going. Listen, I'm going to give you one cold stat over their whole career, and this is going to show the little difference in quality. And Bruce Smith was great, don't get me wrong, one of the best. Reggie White played 232 games in his career and had 198 sacks. Bruce Smith played 279 games with 200 sacks. Now, over his career, Bruce Smith had 2 more sacks than Reggie White. 2 more sacks, but that's in 47 games.
Right.
2 more sacks in a total. You give Reggie White 47 more games, and you have him get like 40 more sacks. He puts, Bruce Smith way in his rearview mirror had he played the same amount of games.
Well,
Bruce Smith stretched out his career a little longer, so on. But when you talk about leadership on the field, leading the guys around you, Reggie White did, and Bruce Smith went to 4 Super Bowls, but Reggie White did win one.
well, let me tell you what you're saying about Reggie White is true, but you also got to consider Reggie White was on one of the best defensive lines in the league at that time. It wasn't just him that was putting pressure on the quarterback. You had Simmons, you had Golick, you had Brown, you had a front four the Eagles had that carried them into the playoffs a lot of years because of just of that front four. They couldn't just double team and triple team Reggie White like they did Bruce Smith. I bet you can't even name, without looking up, another defensive player on the Buffalo Bills.
Darryl Talley was a heck of a player.
Wait a minute, defensive line, Jack. You can't. I don't think you can name one. I can name all 4 without looking up of the Eagles. That's how good that defensive line was. Brown was outstanding. Simmons was good. Golick was solid. They had a front four that was unbelievable. Buffalo didn't have that. They had Bruce Smith on the defensive line. They could double team him, triple team him, and take him out of the game.
Yeah, but that high-powered offense that the Bills had kept the defense off the field a lot of the time.
Well, you can also
Kelly handing off Thurman Thomas would be grinding out yards. Andre Reed, James Lofton as the receivers. I mean,
yes.
They would keep there was a little less pressure on the Buffalo Bill defense than there was on the Eagle defense.
Well, you could say that, but you could also say that Buffalo scored very quickly, and the Bills' defense was right back on the field because they did have a high-powered offense that scored very quickly. In fact, they had the most high-powered offense a couple years in a row in the AFC. So they scored very quickly on teams, Jack, and put that defense right back on the field. So all I'm saying, Jack, is you also got to consider and props to Reggie White, one of the greatest defensive linemen of all time. There is no doubt about it. But Reggie White played with a group of defensive linemen that were all solid to above average to good. Bruce Smith didn't have that opportunity.
And they would have way in part because of him.
I agree.
Reggie White would get double teamed. It would give one of the other players a little less freedom where he could go mano de mano.
I agree with that.
And yeah, but listen, they were Bruce Smith was great.
Right.
He was and then Super Bowl I, Bruce Smith, the way he caught Jeff Hostetler in the end zone, forcing a safety, that showed the quality of Bruce Smith. That was one of the great plays in Super Bowl history. I don't know the answer to this. How many safeties have there been in Super Bowl history?
I don't know. That's
okay. I think that was the first one, but if I'm not mistaken, but
right.
I don't know.
No, that's a great question, Jeff.
Yeah.
That's a great question because I couldn't give you the answer.
One of our viewers, if they could look it up and send it in, that would be nice.
That would be great. That would be great.
Yeah.
So, Jack, before we hit our next, excuse me for a second, before we hit our next debate, and I think we're going to go next with, are we going with Lomachenko, whether he would beat Lopez in a rematch? Let's go ahead, and we're going to go ahead and hit another trivia question here where I will ask the great Jack Hirsch another trivia Halloween.
Mac, if you want to go get a cup of coffee, now I'll do both sides.
Yes.
I'm hypocritical. I wrote a story for Boxing News out of England explaining one end of why Lomachenko can win a rematch and listing a lot of great reasons. But I'm not taking that position here because I really don't believe it. Like devil's advocate. So I could do it. I could do your side of the debate better than you can, and do.
You think so, huh?
Well,
we'll see.
How can I? All you needed to do is read that story, and that would be it. Okay, I go first here. What?
No, wait a minute, Jack. Wait a minute before you
no.
go.
You want to make me look bad here because you thought I was making you look bad.
Yes, Jack. We're back with another trivia Halloween question. You know, you're talking so much smack over there. I had to hit this trivia on you real quick so that, you know, we could get to the total knowledge, the gatekeeper of our history and sports.
I did get the last one right.
Yes, you did.
That might be the only one.
What NFL legend passed away on Halloween in 1983?
Oh, come on, Mac. What kind of, well, who's going to know the answer to that 1983? What NFL legend? Oh, my.
Yes, I mean, we're talking one of the biggest NFL legends in the history of the NFL.
I'm going to Johnny Unitas.
No, that's not. He is a big legend. Yes, he is. But that's
no. Johnny Unitas passed away way later than that. 1980. Right. Yeah, I wanted to. When you say legend, I think of Johnny U. He pops into my head. When it 1983, 37 years ago. Yes, who passed away on Halloween.
On Halloween, Jack.
Oh man, Mac, come on.
Well, I'll give you a little hint.
Give me big hint.
All right, he played right. You'll get this. He played right field for the Yankees just before the great Babe Ruth did.
Wait. You said what NFL legend?
And right.
Telling me he played
right. But before he became an NFL legend, Jack.
Not Red Grange. I think no. I mean, come on.
He played right field for the New York Yankees
before Babe Ruth did.
Before
I'm learning stuff on this show, Mac. I'm leaving here. For one of the rare times, I'm leaving this show more knowledgeable than when I started it. I'm learning things.
Yes.
Field, well, it wasn't a Wally Pipp situation with the Babe coming over NFL. I'm stumped.
Well, the great Papa Bear, George Halas.
George Halas.
Yes, sir.
Played right field. You're kidding me.
No, he would play right field.
And when you said NFL legend, I was thinking of a player.
Right, right.
Wow. He played right field for the Yankees.
George Halas
was
going to be the face of the Yankees. He was such a great hitter. Wow. He could not hit a curveball. Fastballs, he led the Yankee farm system when he first came up. He was with the Yankee, I forget the team, but he led it in batting average and in power and was fast as the wind. And he was going to be the face of the Yankees until they found out he couldn't hit a major league curveball. So
great question.
And instead of George Halas sticking with baseball, he went over, I think it was 1920, and formed the NFL, became player, coach, manager, and owner of the Chicago Bears. He played safety, and he also played, I think it was end on offense. And he actually tackled the great Red Grange, or I think it was either Red Grange or it was Jim Thorpe. It's one of those two. But yeah, and he became, of course, a legendary coach. And so George Halas.
Wow.
1983 in Halloween.
I'm not embarrassed to miss that one. Great.
No, that was a tough one, Jack. That definitely was a tough one.
Great question.
So we're going to go on to our next debate, which would Lomachenko defeat Lopez in a rematch? And Jack, as you were saying, you know 3 times more about boxing than I do, but you also know I'm a hardcore boxing fan, and I'm surprised you took this side for the. I would think I would ask you a question. Who is the greatest amateur boxer of all time? Would you have to agree it was Lomachenko?
I'd say Laszlo Papp, a 3-time gold medalist from Hungary. Lomachenko's close. You could make a nice argument that he was as well.
Would you say when he became pro, he's one of the fastest to come up and take multiple belts?
Of course.
Would you agree with that? So it wasn't that it wasn't that he was just competing against amateur boxing. He came out professionally and went right ahead very quickly and won multiple titles. So there's one fight I got to mention to you. 3 words, Jack. Ali Frazier number one, right? With the hashtag, so I get that word in there. Joe Frazier not only knocked Ali to the canvas in the late rounds, I think it was round 15, if not
15th round.
On all scorecards, he was winning the fight. He didn't think he was. The manager didn't
No,
tell
don't
him.
say didn't think he was.
Wait
He
a
had
minute, wait a
little
minute.
doubt in his
Joe
mind. He
Frazier,
wouldn't
I
count
heard
it
Joe
out.
Frazier from his own mouth said he didn't think he was winning the fight at that
No,
time.
he did not, Mac. He never said that, Mac.
I-
I'm an
I-
Ali Frazier expert. I was at
Okay.
that first fight.
I can
I've been with Joe a number of times.
I can recall seeing that somewhere, Jack. But anyway,
He said on a documentary that maybe he had a little doubt in his mind whether
All right.
he was going to get the decision when he came
Okay.
out for the 15th
Okay.
round. Maybe
Okay.
he had a little doubt in his mind. That's different from
Okay.
saying he didn't think he was winning.
well, a doubt is a doubt, Jack. It may not be exactly the way I'm saying it, but he did. He was not
Mac,
sure.
I have doubts
Wait a
whether
minute,
he'll
wait a
wake
minute,
up
wait a
in
minute,
time
Jack.
to do the
I'm
show with
saying-
you, but I know I'm going to answer the bell.
I am saying that even with a little doubt, he was winning on all cards, and he did end up knocking Ali to the canvas. In the second fight, which was a little controversial, Ali won on points, even though Frazier did put up a tremendous fight. And you could make an argument that he did win that one on points, but Ali won it. And the third fight, Jack, Ali won that. There was no questions asked. Frazier didn't even come out for I forget what round, but he didn't
15th round, yeah.
Right. So, with that in mind, you have Lomachenko and Lopez. Lopez came out. He was outboxing Lomachenko in the beginning, scoring more points. Lomachenko makes a little bit of a run in the middle to the end rounds. His strategy, I think, is the only thing I can think, was that Lopez couldn't go the distance. So he kind of didn't put up a fierce rally in the beginning, thinking that he could wear Lopez down, and that didn't work. But if you're going to say that about Lopez and Lomachenko, then you could say that about Frazier and Ali, that there's no way Frazier dominated Ali, that Ali could come back and beat Frazier, which he did. So to say that could not happen or that would not happen, to me, makes no sense. Lomachenko is a very skilled fighter. He's one of the best boxers in the league, arguably the greatest amateur fighter of all time, unbelievable boxer with a lot of skill. And if he comes out in the next fight and he takes it to Lopez right away, doesn't wait, tries to wear Lopez, the bigger and stronger Lopez, down by a bunch of shots, a bunch of counter shots, and stays with him, then maybe he will wear Lopez down. His strategy was wrong, Jack. You're fighting for the title. He thought that he could outlast him, and that was proven wrong. This time, he would have to take to him a lot earlier. Lopez may catch him. He might. But I'm telling you, if Lomachenko was to win, he would have to take it to him very early, and he could win this fight, Jack.
Mac, just to refresh your memory, I picked Lopez to win the last fight. You picked Lomachenko.
Correct.
Now, what we do when guys have a rematch is use their original fight as a yardstick of measurement to see who is more likely to improve the second time around. What adjustments can they make? What can be different? Lopez is the younger guy, 23. He's only going to get better, not worse, okay? Lomachenko's 32, around 400 amateur fights. There's a certain wear and tear when you've been doing it so long. Now, you're mentioning Lomachenko's strategy was a poor one. Yeah, perhaps. But was he forced into that strategy? Lopez outboxed him, but he did it in a way in which he was moving forward, looking to attack and land his big punches. Lopez is big for a lightweight. He made 135 pounds, but really he should be fighting in a higher division. Lomachenko is small for a lightweight. He made 135 pounds, but maybe should be fighting in a lesser division. And the reason Lomachenko didn't take it to Lopez more over the first 7 rounds or so is because he felt Lopez's power. He risked getting knocked out. He was in with a powerful, powerful guy. Finally, he was so far down, Lomachenko had to take chances. And he did, to his credit, have a few rounds of nice success. against Lopez. Now, had Lomachenko started that way from the beginning, maybe he would have won some of those rounds. But
Right.
what was more likely to happen, he would have either got knocked out, or if he survived Lopez's early attack, Lomachenko wouldn't have been able to damage Lopez as much in the middle rounds as he later did, because he would have expended that energy early. Lomachenko has also had shoulder surgery after the fight. Did it affect his performance last fight? I doubt it. I doubt it.
Right.
But it makes for a good storyline, a good excuse. But when you're coming off a surgery, you don't come back in the ring immediately after and be as good. There's more upside to Lopez improving in the next fight than there is Lomachenko, okay? Lomachenko can do some things differently, of course. Maybe he can turn the tables. Maybe he was a little too overconfident before. Maybe Lopez, who's a growing boy, will have trouble making weight. Maybe Lopez, who was psyched for a couple of years for this fight, won't be able to get up as emotionally for a rematch. There are doors for Lomachenko to go through to win the rematch. But in all likelihood, it comes down to the main entrance door. And in that one, Lopez stands firm, you know, and Lomachenko won't be able to get by him. And
Yeah,
Lopez
well,
wins the rematch.
you're talking about Lomachenko like he's an old man. He's still in his prime, Jack. And even
It's
though
a question. I don't agree with that, Matt.
and, you know, I think a man at 32 is still in his prime, Jack. I really believe that, physically and mentally. That shoulder surgery, I agree with you, could throw it off a little bit, and I understand that. But there have been boxers that have had surgery done and are back within a year to 2 years. I believe, Jack, that Lopez, taking it to him early, Lomachenko tried to outlast him. Lopez's fights didn't last that long, Jack. And again, I throw back at you, Ali Frazier won. If you believe that, with Frazier with his power punches, looked like Ali was getting worn down. He was resting on the ropes a lot. Frazier catches him with a big left hook, and then Ali fights him 2 more times, Jack, and wins the next 2 fights.
Joe Frazier was not the same fighter after the first fight. He was still formidable, but he had slipped. He wasn't the same fighter the first fight. And Ali, if anything, was a little better, because Ali had the 3-year-plus layoff and had 2 fights coming back. And when he fought Frazier, even though Ali should have been in peak form, he didn't really train the way he should have during his enforced layoff. And Frazier was virtually unbeatable that night. I mean, yeah, that was the one peak career performance where he had to win that fight. It was a matter of life and death. He was never the same after. The Lomachenko analogy, Lomachenko's performances before he fought Lopez against Luke Campbell and Jose Pedraza, even though he dominated, you could tell he slipped. Dominated in the sense that he won practically every round against those guys, but wasn't winning the round decisively. He won them clearly, but not as decisively as he'd done in past fights. I mean, Lopez, the younger, fresher guy, history tells us he should, win that fight, if they do it again.
Yeah, I mean, I listen, for the most part, Jack, I would agree that Lopez would have the upper hand, being younger, being fresher. But the question is, would Lomachenko defeat Lopez in a rematch? Yeah, he definitely could. And would he? We'll see. I mean, that's we really don't know the answer to that.
We
question.
want to see it. But we do want to see it. If Lomachenko wants it bad enough, we do want to see it.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, and that's a bit for Lomachenko. It could be some closure. Either you beat Lopez in a rematch, it's time to think about retiring. But what's interesting, Lomachenko is not a hypocrite, because when he beat a great fighter, a gold medalist from Cuba, unbeaten Guillermo Rigondeaux moved up 2 weight divisions to fight Lomachenko. Lomachenko dominated him, made him quit on the stool. It was one-sided. Afterwards, Lomachenko said, I don't deserve much credit. I fought a much smaller man, so I don't deserve to be given all this credit.
Right.
So now when he lost to Lopez, I think the same thing applies to an extent. I mean, it shouldn't be held against Lomachenko that much because he fought a guy who was a lot bigger than he was.
Yeah, yeah, and again, Jack, I think, I mean, could he? Yes. Would he? You're probably right. So, another Halloween story for you, Jack. Before we get to one more commercial break and some more debating.
Not another trivia question. You're killing
No,
me
this
with
is a
those.
story. This is a story, Jack. So we'll finish up with Halloween stories, things that happened on Halloween. In Game 4 of the 2015 World Series, the Royals rallied from a 3-2 deficit. The Royals didn't panic. Eric Hosmer's grounder slipped underneath Murphy's glove, allowing the tying run to score, and that added 2 more runs in that inning to win the game. So Game 4 Halloween, the Royals come from behind on a ball that goes through Murphy's glove. So that's one more story for you. And we got a few more, Jack. We're gonna get to.
Should the Mets have re-signed Daniel Murphy? That's one of the guys they should have re-signed. And, you know, it's old news now, but considering what he did afterwards, it wasn't the best decision to, you know, let him leave as a free agent.
I agree, and I'm going to get one more Halloween story in there before we go to commercial. The Halloween monsoon in 1994, an icy downpour, winds up to 50 miles per hour, Jack. The Packers beat the Bears 33-6. Brett Favre called it one of his most favorite games he ever played in, as the Packers ran the ball most of the game to clobber the Bears at their home turf on Soldier
I got to
Field.
tell you, Brett Favre was maybe one of the toughest quarterbacks in NFL history. Normally, the quarterback is skittish when the linemen are coming at him. Brett Favre loved mixing it up. You come at me, I'm going to run at you.
Yeah.
Eli Manning out-toughed them in the Cold Bowl when they played the Packers to see who
Oh,
wins the
yeah.
Super Bowl. If I were a player, which I'm not, that would be my Achilles heel. I couldn't imagine playing in sub-zero degree weather. That is crazy. Games shouldn't be allowed to be played in weather that's ridiculously cold. It's completely unsafe.
I mean, Tom Coughlin's face almost froze right off. I mean, he turned red. And can you imagine? I mean, the Minnesota Vikings, we talk about Green Bay, when they had that outdoor stadium, I mean, that was crazy with the winds coming off the lakes. They always had the home field advantage. I don't know why they went inside. I think that lost them a lot of championship appearances since they built that indoor stadium.
Viking. Well, the funny thing, the old-time coach of the Vikings, Bud Grant,
right?
I mean, he wouldn't allow his players to have hand warmers on the sidelines.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
They, you know, he believed in that toughness aspect and so on. But I would listen, I tried to go out jogging when I was training for the marathon when I used to run it. And we had a ridiculously cold day in New York. It was 4 degrees. I went out, I started jogging a minute and a half, and I went back to the car. No, I'm not doing this. I'll retire sooner than go through, you know, this weather. You know, some conditions you just, you know, shouldn't be playing in.
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned that, Jack, and the Minnesota Vikings, they also didn't wear gloves that covered the fingers. They had gloves that they had the holes in for the fingers so that they could move their fingers. You know, there was no such thing as the wide receiver gloves, those sticky gloves that they wear today. I think there might even be scuba gloves, if I'm correct. I could be wrong. But
and just one quick story before the 7th inning stretch.
Go right ahead, Jack.
I met someone from Cincinnati, and he told me about the 1980 AFC Championship game where the San Diego Chargers came into Cincinnati to play.
Yeah.
And it was like 0 degrees that day. And he told me he went to the game, and the Bengal players ran out short-sleeved, you know, in the cold weather to get a point because they're from that area. And from warm San Diego, the players came out timidly, and he knew it was all over there. The
Before the game started.
The warm team,
They used to say that these guys
were beaten before the kickoff.
Yeah, they used to say that the home teams that had that very cold weather, like Buffalo and Minnesota at one time, and Green Bay and Chicago, a lot of the players will come out with no shirts on and stuff, and they last about 10 minutes, and they're back in the locker room. This show that they're tough. I mean, it's all about being tough. It's all about that stuff.
Yeah.
So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go do a couple commercials here, Jack. We'll be right back, folks, with our the rest of our show and debate.
Talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed.
Yeah, well, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah, 0 tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's the first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? We need not to drink. I've made it clear to Matt that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's gonna be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he gonna know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, Bill, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Try.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma. I love you too.
Okay, how about tasting this stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye-bye.
Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again.
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Here we're back from commercial break, Jack, and our Halloween special and our update and sports debate show. I've got one more Halloween story for you before we start our next debate, and this will lead us right into our next debate, Jack. The Pats had won 21 games in a row back to the 2003 championship In 2004, they met the Steelers on Halloween with rookie quarterback Ben Roethlisberger, who went out to a fast lead and held off a late rally by the Patriots. So Ben Roethlisberger, a rookie at the time, takes on the Patriots for the first time and beats them, Jack. So another on Halloween day. So the great Ben Roethlisberger versus the Patriots, and those games have been out of sight out of the last years, almost a decade now, Jack. I mean, we're getting close. I mean, you're talking about almost 20 years now. So 2020, 2003, the Patriots and the Pittsburgh Steelers have been going at it. And there you go. So on Halloween, rookie battle there. Very good. So our next debate, it leads us right into it. And Jack wanted to debate whether the Patriot dynasty is over. And Jack, you're up first and explain to me and everybody watching why.
Now, when I brought this up a couple of weeks ago, it was a complicated question, whether it was or wasn't. Now it's not much of a debate. The answer is obvious, it is. After tomorrow, when they lose to the Buffalo Bills, how can you say it's not? I mean, their run's going to be over as far as getting into the playoffs this year. Every team is entitled to a down year. Don't misunderstand me. Every team can have a down year, but with the Patriots, the problems are piling up. I mean, the most important position on your team at quarterback, what direction are they going to be in next year?
Right.
I mean, you might say, well, with Bill Belichick, something will always come up. Okay? You got to have a plan. Cam Newton fell into their lap this year, but there's a reason for it. The other teams went high on Cam Newton. Okay, he wasn't the same player that won the MVP award with the Panthers, but he came to New England, and because of the creativity of Bill Belichick and his offensive coordinator, Josh McDaniels, they ran the right place for Cam. Cam can still play in the NFL, don't get me wrong. He should be able to have a roster spot. He should be able to fill in. He can spark a team to a victory like he did for a couple of games in New England. But he's not the guy going forward. And if Jason Stidham, your backup quarterback, and the guy they were grooming to be the starting quarterback, if he was truly the guy of the future, he wouldn't have gotten beaten out by Cam Newton. Right. They have no plan in place at all. Julius Edelman, I mean, their great receiver there, he's nearing the end of his career. Even if he does come back to New England, it's just going to be as a contributor, not as an impact player. The defense is still good. It's still good, but, you know, they're lagging. And people say because it's Bill Belichick, they automatically have to win. That's not the case. Bill Belichick was with the Cleveland Browns 5 years before he came to New England, and they only had one winning season there. He would have had a record of 36-44 in his 5 years as the Cleveland Brown coach. He's one of the greatest coaches of all time, Bill Belichick. I don't mean to denigrate him in the slightest, but even if Bill Belichick has to take a step backwards and rebuild, I think are the Patriots going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL in the coming years? No. Bill Belichick is too good of a coach and an evaluator of talent to allow that to happen. But when I say their run is ended, I'm saying going forward, they're going to be in the average range. You're talking about a 7-9, 8-8 team the next 2-3 years and so on. And they're going to have to reload and rebuild just to get back to their so-called years of failure, meaning getting to the playoffs and getting eliminated earlier, getting eliminated in the AFC Championship game. Sometimes people don't know when they've had it too good, okay? And that's the case with New England. I think that run of domination has ended.
Well, you know, Jack, I guess it comes down to what your definition of dynasties are. You're saying the Patriots dynasty is over and the season's not even halfway.
Domination.
Right. Right. And half the season is not even played yet. And they still, with Buffalo Bills faltering, Tua taking over as Miami's quarterback, they still have a chance at winning the AFC East. It may be a slim chance, but they still have one. I agree with a lot of points you made. That are they a Super Bowl contender this year? No. Are they a championship contender this year? Of course not. And Cam Newton, the last 2 games that he's played, especially the last one, he looked like the Cam Newton that was hurt for the Carolina Panthers just before they got rid of him. His mechanics are terrible. He's underthrowing people. He looks like he has no zip on the ball. But football, Jack, is more than just a quarterback. And I would imagine that if Cam has another bad game, that they will put the young kid in and that he will take over. I remember way back when a guy named Drew Bledsoe got hurt in a hit by the New York Jets. And this young rookie came in and led the Patriots to a Super Bowl. His name was Tom Brady. And the Patriots of that year are not the same exactly as they are this year, but they didn't have a big wide receiver. They had an average offensive line. They had a great defense and great special teams, which they have right now. So to say the dynasty is over, to a point, I agree with you. To a point, I don't know for sure because I don't know what's going to happen. I think we've got to at least give it to past the halfway point, maybe 12 games to see if that's true. Bill Belichick took a 6th-round pick and helped make him a superstar and helped the Patriots go to an unbelievable amount of Super Bowls that will never happen again. And you may be right, Jack. It may be over for 1 or 2 years. But to me, 1 or 2 years off and then getting right back.
That is pathetic, your argument.
And then getting
absolutely pathetic.
At the playoffs, getting back within 2 years at the playoffs, getting a shot at going back to the championship again, going maybe to a Super Bowl in a couple of years. I would still consider that a dynasty in the amount of years of 20 years of winning the AFC East and 9 Super Bowl appearances. If they do another Super Bowl appearance in 2 years, I still think the dynasty stays intact.
Let me get this straight. Your comparison's like a man who is wealthy, rich, but he made terrible investments, and now he lost most of his assets.
Right.
But you're mentioning, well, he once went and he cashed in on a lottery ticket. He won the lotto. He did it before. He could do it again. That's the equivalent of you saying, well, he got Tom Brady once they plucked him out. You don't pluck Tom Brady's out like that. 6th-round draft choices and get players like that. That's a complete aberration. The chances of that happening again are virtually nil. They're non-existent, Mac. They're not going to happen. New England has serious problems. They're not just going to snap their finger and get a quarterback.
Well, Jack,
they've got to build the house all over again, basically. Listen, we're going to know. You say they could still win the AFC East.
Right.
Talk to me next week. If they beat Buffalo, there's a new narrative for the time being.
I definitely agree with that.
To him, it's over.
You brought up a man with a lot of money making bad investments and losing his money. I once knew a millionaire that lost all his money, Jack, and he said, you know something? I already made $1 million. I know how to make $1 million, and I'll make $1 million again within a few years. And guess what, Jack? He did, because he already knew how to do it. It's people that don't know how to do it are the ones that have problems making those millions. The millionaires that have been successful, have made millions of dollars, know how to make millions of dollars. Bill Belichick has been the greatest coach in the last 20 years by far, and he has built Super Bowl teams and has gone to 9 Super Bowls, and Bill Belichick knows how to build Super Bowl teams. That's why I say the dynasty.
Bill Belichick maintained the Super Bowl caliber teams. He has never been in a situation where he's had an elite team that has hit virtually rock bottom, where he's had to build up again. It's a long haul. Bill Belichick was arguably the greatest NFL coach at all times in retooling, keeping a team there. It's no longer a question of maintaining what he has. He's got to build it back up again. He's never been in this situation, never in his whole career.
So you're saying in a pandemic year with no practices, retooling a team, nine players that have opted out, a few starters that now all of a sudden, because of this year, the dynasty of the Patriots is over. Jack, I think that's a little short-sighted. I think and we haven't even played 3/4 of the season yet. When the Patriots at 3/4 of the season are 6-6, then we'll have that discussion.
Matt, in the regular year last year, they were 4-4 over their last 8 regular season games and then lost the playoff game. That's 5 losses in 9 games.
Right.
So the slippage was starting to show last year. And as far as this being a pandemic year, isn't it strange the elite teams are still good?
And they didn't have nine.
I don't see Kansas City slipping. San Francisco's got it together. The Rams are good. The Ravens are good. The Tennessee is good. You know, the Steelers are good. But New England's the only one going down.
Can you name one Kansas City Chief, one Seattle Seahawk, one starter from them teams that have opted out this year?
And guys maybe opted out for a reason.
I'm just
they
asking
don't have
you,
the motivation to play for New England the same way.
I'm just asking you, any other team that you know of that you've just mentioned that 9 players opted out and a few starters. Can you name one?
Teams have injuries all the time. Dallas Cowboys are more decimated than the New England Patriots for whatever the reason is.
And to compare the Cowboys,
decimated.
To compare the Cowboys to the Patriots is like apples and oranges, Jack. I'm saying, I don't care if the Cowboys were healthy, they still have a terrible team.
Mac, let's see after tomorrow. We have a few minutes left. Let me stick with football and just say something very briefly. One of the great, cornerbacks in NFL history passed away yesterday. That's Herb Adderley of the Green Bay Packers. For those of you who don't know who Herb Adderley was, he's only one of 4 players in NFL history to have 6 championships to his credit. And we're talking about with Herb Adderley, he has 3 of them before the Super Bowls. In Super Bowl 1 and 2, he was a cornerback for those legendary Green Bay Packer teams. And he even in Super Bowl 2 became the first player to return an interception for a touchdown. And he was elected to the Hall of Fame in 1980. He fit in beautifully. He was as good as any player on those legendary Green Bay Packer teams, which included great defensemen like Henry Jordan and so on. He was with the team of Bart Starr, Jim Taylor, Max McGee, Paul Hornung, Jerry Kramer, Fuzzy Thurston. And with Dallas's doomsday defense, he eventually was traded after Vince Lombardi left the Packers to the Cowboys and was a great cornerback for those Packer teams and so on. And 12 seasons he played in the NFL, 9 with the Packers. He was as responsible for the legendary Green Bay Packer teams being as good as they was, responsible as any other player on those teams. And he passed away yesterday at the age of 81, and we remember him today.
Great job, Jack, and I agree with you 100%. Incredible football player on an incredible football team. Ladies and gentlemen,
next week, Mac, what slipped under the radar with us, Tony La Russa, going back to the White Sox as a manager at the age of 76. We'll talk about him next week.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that. Coming back to the White Sox, Tony Russo, I'm glad you brought that up real quick. Tomorrow, guys, we have on our fantasy expert, Anthony Servino, from Fantasy Football Face-Off, and he also breaks down the 3 biggest games with us. We also have on Robert Butler from Sports Scope Podcast, and his commentary will be packed full for our big football show. We hope you join us. Thank you for tuning in today for our Halloween special, and I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.
And remember to turn the clocks back an hour to catch this show.
That's right. Turn the clocks back. Good point, Jack. And we'll see you tomorrow at 8 to 10 a.m. Turn back your clocks and come visit us again. Thank you all for sharing in our Halloween special, and have a great day, folks.
I'll take the Jets with 20.